Fellow Barbadians, I'd like to speak with you directly this evening about the Economic Diversification and Growth Fund Bill. As always, not to talk at you, but to talk with you. I know that many of you have questions. I know that some of you may even feel uneasy. I know that in moments like these, especially when economics or public funds and jobs are involved, sometimes mistrust can creep in very quickly for a few of our people. That is understandable. Economic policy affects our livelihoods, our households, our futures. And when you feel uncertain or feel that something has not been explained clearly enough, you have every right to ask questions. While our parliamentary proceedings are public and accessible, I fully accept that it is not reasonable to expect every citizen to watch Parliament, to read legislation, or to decipher financial language on their own. We expect that of those who really belong to the financial literacy class, but not everyone. If we have not explained something carefully enough, then it is our responsibility, and certainly my responsibility, to come and explain it plainly, directly, and respectfully. And this is what I'm doing now. The Economic Diversification and Growth Fund Bill has been designed and will be implemented with a clear purpose: to protect and to grow jobs, to enhance foreign and domestic investment, and to grow our economy for all Barbadians, especially in a very uncertain global environment. Much has been said publicly about this bill. Some of it has been emotional, and yes, some of it has been political. But I do not dismiss emotion, and I do not dismiss concern. Once we slow the conversation down and look carefully at the facts, a clearer and more balanced picture emerges. Let me start with where we came from, and I must do so because context is always crucial, not just in this matter. Under the previous administration, foreign international business companies were taxed at rates as low as 2.5% and declining to 1.5%, while local companies here in Barbados were taxed at 25% when we came to office in 2018. That is a fact. That system was judged by international regulators to be unacceptable given the ring fencing we provided in favor of foreign companies. In other words, there were two different regimes for foreign and local companies. More importantly, it therefore placed Barbadian businesses at a severe disadvantage in their own country. We corrected that and removed the disparity between the treatment of local and foreign companies with respect to taxation. We told you then that all business is local and international, and that we do not have the luxury of separating the two. But we were able to create a separate regime for small businesses, and small businesses today are taxed at 5.5%, and other companies, whether local or foreign, are taxed at 9%. In addition, from the next financial year, 2026 to 2027, we expect that there will be a number of companies whose revenue exceeds 750 million euros, who will be taxed at 15%, which is the global minimum tax that the OECD prescribed. If we do not do so, the country in which they operate businesses will have the right to tax any difference between what they pay here, below 15%, and the actual 15%. Accordingly, foreign companies now pay more, not less than they did before we came to office. And some will even more pay more in the next financial year, as I just indicated. That is a fact. And that reform has brought in substantially more corporate tax revenue for Barbados, starting last year and continuing this year. Revenue which we have already begun to share with the people of this country, and indeed to do the things to make this country stronger. Revenue that helps protect our social services, our infrastructure, and indeed our stability and platform for prosperity. But my friends, that reform also created a new challenge. If we stop there, if we raise taxes but do nothing else, we risk losing existing investors, as has happened with the USA market in the last 2 years, and we have and will become unattractive to new ones without more. Our tax base becomes very narrow and very tenuous, even though we are earning more revenue. In other words, a smaller number of taxpayers, even though you're earning significantly more money because of the corporate tax reform of 18 months ago. This, my friends, is not sustainable for Barbados in the medium term. We need to encourage more companies with economic substance, local or foreign, to be operating here and to be creating jobs and to be earning foreign exchange and, yes, paying taxes. For you see, when substantive economic investment comes, we get jobs. And when those investors leave or shut down locally, those jobs go. Foreign exchange dries up and government revenue shrinks. These are all the facts of the lived Caribbean experience. We saw it with Intel here in Barbados when they closed in the early 1980s, and so many others. In fact, recently, in 2022, we saw it with TT Electronics, who left our shores, and so went the jobs, the foreign exchange, and the tax revenue from them. And in that case, it was approximately 350 jobs. Imagine the economic activity that they spawned locally from those 350 Bajans working. Have we been in a better position fiscally at the time, we would be in a position to see what support we could have put in place. But we were, as you know, in the middle of COVID, where we were having to do structural adjustment for the rest of the country to protect those who were not earning and to be able to expand significantly the amounts of money available to the Ministry of Health to keep people alive and to keep people well. So the question before us, my friends, is simple but serious. How do we remain competitive for investment and jobs without violating international tax rules or without risk being blacklisted again? Please remember that blacklisting leads to companies wanting also to leave our jurisdiction, as companies are compromised in doing their business in the countries where Barbados is blacklisted. That is why we work so hard to remove the blacklisting, both as a result of the OECD and the Financial Action Task Force, and it took us years to do so. We inherited the situation, but we accepted it was our responsibility to remove it, and we have been successful in removing it. My friends, the old tools are gone. The days of blanket tax holidays and deep tax concessions are over. And I will be real with you, they're not going to be coming back. What remains is the need for smart, lawful, transparent alternatives, and that is exactly what this bill seeks to provide. The Economic Diversification and Growth Fund is designed to augment, not replace, our economic toolkit. It allows Barbados to remain attractive for investment that earns foreign exchange, that creates jobs, and yes, that still pays taxes. So now let me be very clear about what this bill does and what it does not do. No investment or support will be given to any foreign company that does not significantly expand employment in Barbados. The bill speaks of at least 100 jobs being created to be eligible. And indeed, they must also earn foreign exchange above certain thresholds. These companies will still pay tax at 9%, not the old rates of 2.5% declining to 1.5%, so that they will be paying significantly more taxes. And those few who are subject to the 15% rate of tax will also pay that from next year. Equally important, this fund is not closed to Barbadians. Local companies with a foreign presence can also benefit. We want companies to also export capital so that when bad things happen here, like a hurricane, they will be able to benefit by still having streams of revenue outside of Barbados. We've seen it with some of our larger companies that kept them afloat during the last decade. Our businesses benefit now and will continue to benefit through existing mechanisms, including, as I said, for small businesses, a lower tax rate of 5.5%. Many of these companies who are local will have access and have had access to the Industrial Credit Fund, the Agricultural Development Fund, the best program for tourism that we designed in the heart of COVID, and the Small Hotels Investment Fund, which we are about to recapitalize. This is not an either-or proposition. It is both, as it was always when we were liberally offering far more generous tax concessions to foreign companies. The difference is that you in the public never understood fully the quantums, because that was done between the Revenue Authority and the particular companies, anchored by legislation that passed Parliament, but the amounts were never known to the public. That's what happens when it is a tax concession, because you lose the right to earn that money. But with a subsidy, you earn money, but you spend the subsidy and pay the company the money. I want to address also issues about governance, oversight, and accountability. Because yes, your concerns are legitimate. Every cent that enters this fund and every red cent that is spent will be accounted for. The fund is administered by the Accountant General. It will be audited by the Auditor General. The applications are assessed by a broad-based advisory committee that includes public servants and private sector expertise. The committee is chaired by the Director of Finance and Economic Affairs and also has on it the Governor of the Central Bank and the Chief Executive Officers of Export Barbados and Invest Barbados, and 2 members of the private sector who must have experience in finance or business administration. My friends, it does not stop there. The Minister acts on the advice of that committee, but also seeks the advice of the National Growth Council, whose members are not members of government and whose members are not part of the partisan political space. The chairman of that National Growth Council is Mr. Doddridge Miller, a leading Barbadian businessman and Chancellor of the University of the West Indies. These are not accidental safeguards. They are deliberate guardrails designed to protect the public interest. This is a system of governance, my friends, that has worked for Barbados in the post-independence era and has generally worked well for us. At the end of the day, the truth is that this bill is about real jobs for real people in the real world that we're living in, and not the one that we wish still existed. And to those, my friends, who say this is not the right time, I say this with respect and with conviction. There is no wrong time to do the right thing for Barbados and Barbadians. The world more and more has restricted our policy flexibility and continues to do so as small open economies in so many ways. You've heard me say so over and over. That is why so much of our time is spent trying to give us that space in our tax policy, in our trade policy, in our access to grants and concessional funds. Very often we feel that our policy space is such that we go with it with one hand and one leg because we don't have full access to the tools that other countries have as larger jurisdictions or more developed countries. This is even more acute in the very challenging and uncertain times in which we live. Disruption of supply chains and logistics, and you heard private sector businessmen in today's paper complaining about that. Tariffs being imposed across goods, restricted movement to other countries, and of course, most disturbing to all of us, wars and rumors of war, not just in our region, but globally. My friends, this has nothing to do with the dislocation that we continue to face as a nation from drought, from floods, from storm surge, and from hurricanes, because that has been the lived reality of Bajans over the course of the last few years. Yes, these are not normal times. And we have to not only provide for today, but we must also recognize that we must provide for what we will face in the medium term as a nation. We must become more resilient. We must have broad-based and sustained growth from a wider base of companies. The government is working to doing this. This allows us to ease the burden on Bajan taxpayers. It allows the persons who are now about to receive the reverse tax credit to do so, or those who pay no taxes effectively because they earn between 25 and 35,000 per year, and therefore they don't pay. Ultimately, because the compensatory income tax credit returns every cent that they had paid. Similarly, it also allows persons who earn above $3,000 a month to continue to pay lower tax rates since 2019, when we adjusted the tax rates at the personal income tax level. It allows you as well to pay lower land taxes, which we have reduced year by year, but equally, by law this year, it will even become lower in 2026 for you. So my friends, I understand your concerns, and I respect your right to question. And I believe deeply that trust is built not by silence, but by explanation. And that is why I have spoken to you directly today. These matters are vital to building the resilience of the Barbadian economy. And this is a matter of deep fundamental importance to our resilience. The government must have the flexibility to keep this country competitive and attractive for investment, to create jobs, to earn foreign exchange, to give us stability and prosperity. but it equally must always be prepared to be transparent and accountable for the actions it takes. And that is why the bill is drafted in this way. This action is not being taken under cover of night, but with full parliamentary scrutiny. Deeply conscious of the pain and suffering that Bajans endured and the hard work we had as a government and with you across the country to do with the social partnership and you in households and businesses, the work that we had to do to restore confidence, your government, my friends, will not play fast and loose with Barbados' fiscal and economic stability, nor with the well-being of Bajans. Nor will we shy away from the transparency required in the administration of public funds. You have my assurance as to these facts. I want to thank you for listening, and I beg you to stay safe during the Christmas season, and may God continue to bless Barbados. I have every confidence that I will, while wishing you Merry Christmas today, get the opportunity to wish you that many more times between now and December 25th. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless our country.